picture this. You are 34 years old. You live in Buenos Aires. You have a decent job. You did everything right. You saved. And then, in 1 year, your currency lost 211% of its purchasing power. 211%. That is not a hypothetical. That was Argentina. 2023. Millions of Argentines did not wait for the government to fix it. They moved their savings into something the government could not print. Not gold, not dollars. Bitcoin. This is not a story about crypto bros getting rich. No. This is a story about mathematics replacing trust. And it is happening everywhere. Argentina, Nigeria, and now, quietly, on Wall Street. Here is the mechanism nobody explains clearly. Every currency you have ever used, euros, dollars, pesos, runs on the same principle. A small group of people decides how much of it exists. When they need more, they print more. And every time they print more, your existing money becomes worth less. The United States is the clearest example. In fiscal year 2025, the U.S. government spent $7 trillion. It collected $5.2 trillion. The difference, $1.8 trillion, was borrowed. The national debt now sits at $38.4 trillion. The interest payments alone, just the interest, reached $970 billion last year. That is more than the entire defense budget. This is not a political statement. It is not about which party did what. It is a math problem that no amount of political will can solve. You cannot borrow more than you earn forever. You cannot print money indefinitely without destroying the thing you are printing. The Argentine peso collapsed. The Turkish lira lost over 80% of its value in 5 years. The Nigerian naira has been devalued multiple times in the last decade. Different countries, different governments, same math. And the people who suffer are never the ones making the decisions. They are people like Maria in Buenos Aires, like Emeka in Lagos, like you. Now, here is where this gets interesting. Most people think they understand Bitcoin. They do not. Ask someone what Bitcoin is, and they will say something about digital money or internet coins. That is like saying a car is a metal box with wheels. Technically true, completely useless as an explanation. Bitcoin is a fixed supply monetary network that no single person, no single company, no single government controls. Let me say that again, because every word matters. Fixed supply. No single controller. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. 20 million have already been created. The last one will be mined around the year 2140. This is not a promise. It is not a policy that can be changed by a new administration. It is code, running simultaneously on thousands of computers across every continent, enforced by mathematics, not by people. If someone wanted to create more than 21 million Bitcoin, they would need to convince every single one of those computers to change their rules at the same time. That is not practically difficult. That is mathematically impossible under the current design. Compare this to what we call money. The US dollar supply has expanded by over 40% since 2020. The euro supply grows every time the European Central Bank decides it needs to. Your money does not have a supply cap. It has a committee. That is not alarmism. That is arithmetic. Here is where the narrative breaks. When people talk about Bitcoin adoption, they imagine traders in front of screens, green and red candles. That is the television version. The real version is happening in places where the existing financial system has already failed. Take Nigeria. As of 2024, Nigeria ranked second globally in cryptocurrency adoption. An estimated 22 million Nigerians, more than 10% of the population, now own or use cryptocurrency. This is not because Nigerians love technology more than Europeans. It is because 36% of Nigerian adults do not have a bank account. They cannot send money abroad. They cannot receive payments from international clients. The traditional banking system simply does not work for them. Emeka runs a small import business in Lagos. He buys electronics from suppliers in China and sells them locally. For years, he had two choices for paying those suppliers: wire transfers that took 5 days and cost 12% in fees, or carrying cash. Both were terrible. Today, he sends Bitcoin. It takes 10 minutes. The fee is often under $1. He does not care about the price. He cares that it works. Then there is Argentina. In 2024, Argentina received an estimated $91 billion in cryptocurrency value, just slightly ahead of Brazil, a country with more than 4 times its population. Why? Because when your currency is collapsing and the government restricts how many dollars you can buy, you look for an exit. Bitcoin became that exit, not as a speculative bet, as a survival mechanism. Even in wealthy countries, the cracks are showing. A 32-year-old on a personal finance forum recently posted that his boss called him an idiot for putting his pension contributions into anything other than the guaranteed 3% fund. Guaranteed 3%. When inflation is running higher than that, guaranteed 3% means guaranteed loss. As one commenter on the Bitcoin subreddit put it, and I am paraphrasing, poor returns from pension companies are driving people toward alternatives. Volatility and self-custody are the barriers, but the current system's failure is the engine. Now, here is where this gets interesting. Again, for years the narrative was simple. Bitcoin was for criminals, for speculators, for people who did not understand real finance. Wall Street laughed at it. Governments threatened to ban it. And then something changed. In early 2024, BlackRock, the largest asset manager in the world, with over $10 trillion under management, launched a Bitcoin exchange-traded fund. Fidelity followed. So did dozens of others. By mid-2025, BlackRock, Fidelity, and Grayscale dominated the crypto ETF market. Institutions now hold nearly 23% of all Bitcoin ETF assets. Think about what that means. The same institutions that manage pension funds, retirement accounts, sovereign wealth funds, are now holding Bitcoin. The same Fidelity that runs your neighbor's 401k also offers a crypto IRA, where you can hold Bitcoin in a tax-advantaged retirement account. And then there is Michael Saylor. His company, Strategy, now holds more than 761,000 Bitcoin on its balance sheet. At a conference in 2026, he said something that should make everyone pause. It's not complicated. Bitcoin is money. This is not a fringe opinion anymore. This is the direction the largest pools of capital on Earth are moving. Not by choice, by necessity. Because here is the question every institutional investor is now asking. If the US government is borrowing almost $2 trillion a year, if interest payments alone are approaching $1 trillion, if no political party has a credible plan to stop either trend, what exactly happens to the dollar over the next 30 years? And if the answer is, it loses value, the follow-up question writes itself. Where do you put your money instead? The honest assessment is this. Bitcoin is not magic. It will not make you rich overnight. It is volatile. It is still young, 16 years old, which in monetary terms is infancy. Governments are still figuring out how to regulate it. The technology is still evolving. Self-custody, holding your own Bitcoin rather than keeping it on an exchange, requires learning and responsibility that most people are not used to. But none of those problems change the core mathematics. 21 million. Fixed supply. No central controller. Enforced by code running on thousands of computers worldwide. The pension systems we spent the last 2 videos analyzing are failing for the same reason the Argentine peso failed. There are more people taking money out than putting money in. The gap is filled by promises. Promises backed by nothing but the hope that tomorrow's workers will pay for today's retirees. Bitcoin does not ask you to trust a promise. It asks you to verify a mathematical proof. That is not a political position. That is not financial advice. That is simply the difference between a system run by people and a system run by code. You do not have to buy Bitcoin. You do not have to like Bitcoin. But if you care about your financial future, if you have spent even 10 minutes thinking about your pension, your savings, or what the world looks like when you are 68, you owe it to yourself to understand what it actually is. Because the people who dismissed it 10 years ago said the same things people say today. And every year, the math gets harder to argue with. If this changed how you think about money, even slightly, you are not alone. And that is exactly why this channel exists. We are living through the largest monetary experiment in human history. Every government is printing. Every currency is devaluing. Every pension system is straining. Bitcoin is not the answer to everything, but it is the only answer that does not require you to trust someone who has every incentive to betray that trust. Subscribe to Neo Economy. We publish economic analysis every week focused on what actually affects your financial life. No spin, no jargon, just the data and what it means for you. Drop your questions in the comments. I read every single one.